Warren Buffett, also known as the world's greatest investor. So today we'll take a sneak peek into Warren Buffett's portfolio and see exactly what stocks did he purchase and sell in the Q4 of 2021. So let's get started and analyze his stocks fundamentally and also technically. Now, the first stock that Warren Buffett added to his portfolio in the Q4 of 2021 was Activision. Now, Activision is a gaming company, and it was pretty beaten down, and he purchased it at the perfect time that anyone could purchase a stock. And this is just before Microsoft went ahead and acquisitioned it. So Activision had fairly decent earnings of an EPS of 3.62, not the best, not the greatest. It was pretty beaten down, and he got it at a good price too. Now, Warren Buffett did go ahead and purchase Activision, 15 million worth of stock for around $1 billion. So it's a huge purchase to add to his portfolio. So let's look at the fundamentals and see, is it a good investment for us to just capitalize on the momentum that we see with the acquisition of Microsoft that happened a few weeks after his initial purchase. So the EPS for it is at 3.62, not the greatest, but not the worst as well. With Microsoft coming into the picture, we would see good positive changes in that direction as well. The PE is at 22, still healthy enough. The dividend yield is at 0.58, so it's not the greatest, but not the worst as well. Like, you do find a lot of other technology stocks not giving you even a 0.58. The market cap's fairly low in comparison, but it's still like, this is a fairly small stock compared to the others. So it's just at 63 billion, and the daily volume averages around like 9 million shares. So not the greatest, but at the same time not the worst as well. So if you look at the earnings, and this is where Warren Buffett did the best possible deal to get in at the right time, because he bought a fairly beaten down stock, which I had a forecast earnings of minus 14% for the first quarter of 2022, and the second quarter also forecast it at minus 20%. So it's not the greatest stock, but with Microsoft coming into the picture, there could be a lot of potential growth in store for the stock as well. Next, let's look at the financials and see, is this a stable company to invest in as well? So the revenue for Activision is around 8,000 million, so which is fairly good. The gross profit's also pretty good as well. So like, it's a healthy company with the operating income at 3,000 million. So nothing bad in terms of its bookkeeping purposes. So it's a fairly good company, but it does invest a lot of its money into building the company because it's such a small company. So there's a lot more in store to come for it. Next, let's look at the technicals for Activision. So Activision, this is around when the acquisition took place, around early mid-Jan, and you can see the big spike up in the stock after that happened. And it's been fairly stable since that time frame. So it kind of like has found its base around the 78 mark, but it's still a good buy for Warren because he did buy it around the 64, the 63 mark. So still a good purchase. What we can predict for the future is that it would now hover around the 50 period moving average line, at least stabilize there. So this is the weekly chart that I've put in front of you. So still good momentum to come. Like, the stock will like rise in time. Something to keep in mind is the earnings forecast. The earnings forecast, if it doesn't seem the same level that we would see on like Microsoft or any of the other big companies, you might see a slight decline in how the stock performs here. So as long as it's healthy above the 50 period moving average line, it is a good purchase that you could add to your portfolio. But in the long term, it is going to make money. So these few quarters would be where it will then stabilize itself. There will be a change in the internals of the company in terms of the management style and like what is their strategy for the future. So from a long-term perspective, I do feel like it's a good stock to add to your portfolio as there is a lot of growth potential in it. The next stock that Warren Buffett added to his portfolio in Q4 was NU Holding. Now, this is just an unknown company, but they specialize in financial tech, and this is one of the few times that Warren Buffett would invest into something into the technology sector. He's done it once before too, but this was a rare occurrence that he added it. So this is extremely undervalued. The EPS is like nothing in comparison to the other stocks. The short interest is at 4.61%. Market cap's around 40 billion. So it's just an unknown name, nothing really to speak about. Let's look at the technicals quickly to see if there is any growth prospects for you to add it to your portfolios. So this is the technical chart for NU Holding, and as you can see, it's a fairly newly listed stock on the NYC exchange. And from what the analysis looks like, Warren would have purchased it around this particular mark. Now it has fallen since then, but it has recovered fairly well as well. So it's still an early stock, not priced anywhere in the high range mark. So it's hard to tell how the stock would like move in the future, but with Warren purchasing over $1 billion worth of NU Holding, so seems to be an interest. He probably has done a lot more fundamental analysis into this particular stock to see that there could possibly be a lot of growth potential in it. So let's look at the fundamentals and see, is there anything more that we probably missed out in the price earnings ratio or the financials for the market. So the total revenue for NU Holdings it's around the 425 million mark for December 2020, which is fairly good. It is a good stock. Now, if you compare it with the operating income, it is at 120 million. So it's not the best, but that's the reason why it's priced accordingly at $9. So it could be a good stock to hold in your portfolio. Maybe not in like high volumes, but something that seems to be piqued the interest of like one of the greatest traders that we know of. Now, another company that Warren Buffett increased his position size in is the Liberty Group's Sirius XM, and you probably know about it from listening to the radio in your car, or like people have it in their houses as well, where they would listen to radio through the internet or through satellite, and that's the operating model of it. Now, there could be a possibility that now Warren's a value investor, so he does see a lot of growth potential in this. And he probably bought it at a very good price, and he's trying to like increase his position size. So he did increase it by a third. Now, in terms of the fundamentals, like the EPS is at 2.67, the PE ratio is at 18.95, fairly good, and it's a good value stock to get in. The market cap's fairly low at 16.75 billion, and the volume's also fairly low as well. Now let's look at the earnings and see, does it have any good growth potential in store for it as well. Now, the earnings estimates for the stock does seem to meet its expectations. So if you look at the previous quarters that it's performed, it's actually in line with all its expectations. So that's a sign of stability. It's not ever not meeting expectations. So that's another good sign for the stock as well. Now, another stock that Warren Buffett has added to his portfolio, and this is more to average out his previous positions, and he's averages out by a third. So it's a significant increase in the number of stocks that he's added now. And this is Liberty Sirius XM Group, and you probably know about it from the Sirius XM radio that you probably heard in your car. So it's a fairly like value investment stock that I would consider this to fall under, and that's Warren Buffett. Like, he's all into value investments. So the EPS for Liberty Sirius XM is at 2.67, fairly small. The PE is at 18.95. It doesn't give you any dividend yields, and also the short term the short interest is at 1.51%, and the market cap's at 16.75 billion. With the overall volume being around like 900,000 shares traded on a daily basis. So nothing crazy to look at. What I do feel is that Warren Buffett probably like bought it at a fairly low price, and now he's trying to average it out now that it's kind of stabilized at a higher. But let's look at the technical analysis and see if it's a good investment to add to your portfolios. Now, I've pulled up the daily chart for the stock, and as you can see, this is the 200 period moving average line here, and it has crossed it right now. So I'm guessing that This was purchased by Warren Buffett around like the Q4. So this is the time that he went into his investment. Now, since then, it has significantly dropped out, but there is no sign that he has sold his investment into it yet, or it would come out in the next report. So it still seems to be like a fairly good buy, that since it's rose over the 200 period moving average line and it's still hovering closer to its previous high. Now, there could possibly be a consolidation that it's touched the previous high. So time will tell, like, how does it react? Does it actually decide to go up to build new highs? If it does that, that's a good time to get in. So my recommendation to you is that, keep an eye out on if it crosses 51.51, then you could possibly go ahead and like purchase something into this stock as well. So this is another stock that Warren has in his portfolio. Let's look at another stock that he has recently added as well. Now, another stock that he added to his portfolio by a third is Chevron, and Chevron's got a very good EPS at 10.64. Its P is very low as well, so it's got a good balance of good value investment all written all over it. It does have an extremely good dividend yield of 4%. So like, it's a really good stock that you could possibly add it to your portfolio as well. The market cap's at 263 billion, high volume, so it's got all good signs of like a really good stock to add. Let's look at the technicals and see if that makes a good sound investment as well. Now, if you look at the technicals for Chevron, it is a very healthy stock. So it has taken a few dips on the 20 period moving average, and that's the yellow line that you see here. But if you look closer, it seems to be respecting the 20 period moving line. Now, with oil going up so high, it does seem to be a good investment. Now, there has been now this is on the daily time frame, but there has been some kind of consolidation around the last week or so, and it did take a small nosedive. Now, if it does seem to hit higher from this 20 period moving average line, it may be a potential good buy to add to your portfolio. So something to keep in mind as you track this in your portfolio as well. Now, another stock that Warren Buffett added by a fairly significantly smaller ratio or proportion that he's increased his portfolio size by is RH. Now, RH is a home furnishing company, and if you look at its fundamentals, its EPS is at 25.96, which is really healthy. The PE is at 15.74. The volume's okay-ish. I wouldn't consider it anything significant. But this is something that you could add for a long-term investment strategy. So let's look at the technicals and see if that's performing well. Now, if you look at the technicals for RH, it doesn't seem to be one of the strong stocks. But if it's a long-term investment that you're after, if you want to purchase it right now and keep it for a few years, you'll definitely recuperate like your investments in it. Let's look at the weekly or maybe the monthly to see if there is like a good time to buy it. And now this will give you a better picture. So if you bought this around the 200 period moving average, and that's what the weekly sign indicates, it is a good buy, and it has significantly dropped from its highs of like 700. So if you're a value investor like Warren Buffett, this is a perfect opportunity to buy, because you're buying dips, you're buying good discounts in stocks, and this seems to be like a really good discount. So now looking at the daily, you would not get that picture. So that's where weekly comes into, giving you a better perspective of the market. So to me, like, this would be like a good solid buy. I would say, yes, go ahead, add it to your portfolio. Another company that Warren Buffett added to his holding size, and this is just by 1 to 3%, so it's not a significant average up that he has included for his portfolio, but this is Floor and Decor Holdings, and the EPS for it is not the best at 2.46. The PE is at 42.64. Short interest is at 3.3%, so there's still people shorting this particular stock. The market cap's at 11 billion and the volume's at 520. So not the greatest or the healthiest stock to ever have, but this is something that Warren's looking at it from like a fundamental, and also let's see the technicals and see if it doesn't make sense to get on it as well. So this is FND on the weekly time frame, and as you can see, it has broken the 50 period moving average line, which is a sign of weakness. Now, if this was closer to the 200 period moving average line like we saw in the previous stock, that would possibly be a good buy for me. But it's hard for me to really put my money into this. So like I would say maybe now I do believe in technicals as well as fundamentals as well. So maybe if you're like an investor that's looking for like the next 5 years, you could possibly get into it right now. But if I'm looking at it from a technical perspective, I'll probably wait until it touches the 200 period moving average line. It could possibly touch the 50 period and then either turn down. Let's look at the monthly just to see if it gives us any better indication. So now this is probably why you would see some investors get in, is if you had to purchase it around the 20 period moving average line on the monthly, that would be a good discount price to get it at. So around the 100-ish mark would be good, because the market will generally tend to rebound out of it. Now, if you look at it closely, it seems to be that this month's lower than the previous month that declined. So there could possibly be a tendency that the market may touch the 100 again, and that's where it may tend to head. So if some of you may have purchased it around 100, that would be a good price to buy it at. Or maybe just wait and see if it kind of like gives you that same 100-ish line again, and then like take a buy position in it. Okay, so now that we've seen what did Warren Buffett add to his portfolio, maybe as a new position or maybe as something to average his position sizing, let's look at what he took out of his portfolio. And the first one that we'll look at is a company called TEVA, which is a pharmaceutical company. And this is something that he exited from his portfolio completely and sold all stakes that he had in it. Now, if you look at the fundamentals for TEVA, its EPS is like a minimal 2.58, a PE is at 3.31, and maybe that's a sign of danger. That's the reason why such a low PE ratio would mean like slow growth into the stock as well. Now, the short interest is at 2%, market cap's at 9 billion, and the average volume's around 7 million for the average daily volume as well. Now, if you look at the stock, and now this is, we don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you look at it, it seems to be fairly choppy. It hasn't really performed for like a significant part of like from August 2021 till today. So I think that probably could be a reason why he has exited his position in it, but that's just again speculation. But something to keep in mind on like what did he exit off, so or what would he consider his strategy of like exiting his position in this particular stock. Another stock that Warren did exit out of his position was Siri, which is Sirius XM Holdings. And now this is probably a reshuffle in his portfolio because he did purchase the parent group that also does own Sirius XM, so maybe that's his strategy there. But if you look at the performance for Sirius XM, it's I wouldn't even consider this as performance. It's at 0.32%. The P is at 19. The dividend yield is at 1.42. Not the best, but okay-ish. Market cap's at 24 billion and the volume's at 20 million. But if you look at the overall, like how the stock has trended, it's been fairly average. So the only way you could really get your bang for your buck of whatever you put into the market or invested in the stock is if it grows, or probably just the yield of 1.42%. And I guess that's the reason why Warren Buffett did not feel it's like a worthy investment to still keep, and has either exited all his stock in this particular position, or like has reduced it significantly. A few other stocks that Warren did reduce position sizing was BMY, which is Bristol Myers Squibb Company. Now, the company has an EPS of 7.81, the PE is at 8.56, the dividend yield is at 3.23, so it's giving you good, healthy dividend yields, and I guess that's the reason why he did keep it. Now, an important thing to look at over here is that in December, the stock did tank. And since we're looking at what did Warren Buffett exit from his portfolio in the Q4 of 2021, that could possibly be the reason why he did get out of it, because it did significantly drop around the December-ish mark of Q4 of 2021. Now, since then, it has picked up to its all-time highs that we see in August. So it has grown up significantly since then. But I guess that's just something to keep a note of, like how or when did Warren Buffett exit out of this position. Another stock that Warren reduced position sizing is ABBV. And so the one of the reasons that I could possibly guess for it is the flat growth that you could see around October to December. It hasn't really like performed out like substantially. Now, one of the reasons why he probably did keep it is the 3.94% of dividend yield. So that's a really good dividend yield percentage. But since then, it has significantly grown, since in December and all the way up to Feb. So it is a good growing stock now since the flat performances in December. So maybe this is something you could consider. In a 1 year time span, it has increased 36%. So it's a healthy stock to consider and add to your portfolio. It has a decent market cap of 252 billion, good volume, daily volume as well. And its EPS to PE ratio is really good. It's like your PE is at 10 and like your EPS is at 14. So I think this is a thumbs up from me if you would like to add it into your portfolio. A couple others that were also reduced was Visa. And Visa, if you look at December, you could see it did go into like a great depression, you could call it, where it was just like tanking week after week after week. So you could see like somewhere around like December-ish is where it did go to its lowest. Now it has picked up since then. And that also shows you that not every investor can pick the lowest bottoms and the tops the best way. Like they do like have their own reasoning why they would like to like step into a stock at that particular level and like exit at a different level too. But since the bottom at in December 2021, it has grown up. It's gone up to like a good substantial healthy levels to what we've seen somewhere in October. So this would be a good buy as well to add to your portfolio. No one's going to not use a credit card anymore. There is no financial meltdown in store for the market. So I would suggest that this could also be something to keep your eye on for a long-term investment as well. Now, another stock that very similar to what we just saw was Mastercard. So I'm not sure what the strategy was, but this is another position where he exited either like his entire position size or reduce his position size. So not really clear on why Visa and Mastercard were both placed together, because it does reduce diversification. But Mastercard in comparison has an EPS of 10.41. The P is on the higher side of 35. The dividend yield is at 0.52. Not really good. But comparing with Visa, Mastercard did also perform significantly bad in December-ish. So you can see like the big drop there all the way down to its lowest lows. But it is again made its way up. Like it's now like almost to the highs that we've ever seen in around Feb. So it has made its way up, and that's again like the sign that no one's going to get rid of credit cards. No one's going to stop like using credit anymore. And with Visa and Mastercard being worldwide commodities, like it's got always growth potential. So buying around the December would have been a good option, and like a lot of the long-term investors probably took their positions at that time too. So it's just something that to keep in your mind on like how people trade as well. So now that we have looked at what did Warren Buffett add to his portfolio, what did Warren Buffett take out of his portfolio, reduce position sizing, now let's look at what did he actually keep unchanged. Like he's not touched it, he's just still monitoring it. And one of those stocks is the Bank of America. So Bank of America, if you look at it from like a technical side, just on the chart on your left hand side, you will notice that it has like a pretty healthy 42% growth at least for the last year. And from its EPS perspective, it's at 3%. Not the best, not the worst, but it's got a proportionally priced PE ratio, which is at 14.64. Now, it does give you a good, healthy 1.77 yield. And the strong part of it is like it's got a good market cap of 383 billion, and it has a really high volume as well. So it's something again to consider to either add to your portfolio or maybe monitor it to see if there's a good opportunity to buy into it as well. Another stock that he has unchanged in his portfolio is Apple. And Apple, I keep talking about it all the time, and it's been doing significantly well. So the growth for Apple has been 24%, not as high as the previous few stocks that we've seen, but in terms of like growth potential, it is like one of the top picks that anyone could add to their portfolio. So the EPS is a healthy 6.15. The PE is a little on the higher side at 27. Dividend yield is at 0.52. Do not expect Apple to give you good dividend yield. It's a good growth stock though. Now, this is where it shines in its market cap of 2.76 trillion, and that's amazing. And the volume again is at 64 million. So really good, healthy stock. Warren knows which stocks to really keep untouched, and this is one of them. Another stock that Warren Buffett has kept untouched, at least in the Q4 of 2021, was Amazon. Now, we have seen a significant drop in Feb or around the end of Jan for Amazon, but around December it was doing pretty healthy. So we'll have to look at the next report that comes out to see what did Warren Buffett do to react to the big decline. Did he go ahead and purchase a lot more? Did he average out? So that's something that I can keep you updated on. But looking at the EPS, the earnings per share it's at a very high 48.49. The PE ratio again is also high as well at 63.99. The dividend yield is nothing. They don't give you any dividend yield, but the market cap's at 1.58 trillion, and the volume is also high in the 2 million range. Now, the only downside is that as of today, the overall value is minus 5% compared to the same time last year. So it hasn't grown, or if it has grown, it has declined significantly since the highs that it's made. But this is something again to keep an eye on, like people, what are the greatest investors adding or taking out from the portfolio? And this is one that he has kept unchanged as of Q4 of 2020. Now, another stock that Warren has kept unchanged is the American Express company, and he's got 24 billion worth of total stock holdings in his portfolio. Now, in terms of growth, the American Express company has grown 48%, which is on the contradictory to like him exiting Visa and Mastercard, but keeping American Express, for a continued growth in his portfolio. Now, if you look at American Express, you'll see that though it declined in December of 2021, the decline hasn't been as significant as what we've seen in Visa and Mastercard, and maybe we'll have to ponder more into like how it performs in its fundamentals. But in terms of an EPS, it's got a healthy EPS of 9.7. The PE is at 19.84. The dividend yield is at 0.89, not the best, but it's got a very good healthy volume of 4 million, and also a decent market cap of 146 billion as well. Another company that Warren Buffett still has in his portfolio and has kept unchanged is CocaCola. Now, if you've been tracking his portfolio, you probably know that he has kept Coca-Cola for a very, very long time. He's one of the early investors into Coca-Cola. Now, in terms of its price, Coca-Cola has risen 19.71% year over year. Now, its EPS is very low, a minimal 2.46. But what it does well is that it gives you a good dividend yield of 2.77%. Now, its market cap is also fairly high at 262 billion, and the volumes at around 13 million shares traded per day. So it's also a good dividend yielding stock, but it's also showing that it's growing significantly well, like a year over year as well. So it's something to consider if you would like to add it to your portfolio. And the last stock that we have on our list that Warren Buffett still has in his portfolio and has kept it unchanged is Kraft Heinz company. And this is something that he again owned for a very long time. He, if I remember right, the estimated like value is around like 80 billion or so. So it's a significantly large portion of his portfolio that consists of Coca-Cola and Kraft Heinz as well. So in terms of like the growth potential, it hasn't really grown much. This is just like a long-term like investment strategy that you could have. Now, what it does well, though it doesn't grow to the same levels year over year, it gives you a 4.63% yield. And that's what value investors do, is that they will use dividends to fuel their portfolio size and compound interest their portfolio. So the EPS is at 2.77, the P is at 12.47. Nothing crazy to talk about, but it's a decent stock. We all know about it. We've all had Kraft Dinner or any of the other products that consist of the parent company. So I think, yeah, that summarizes everything that we had in store. This is actually comprises of everything that Warren Buffett has in his portfolio right now. So I hope you got some value out of the entire video that we had. Do let me know your comments of like, were you surprised that you saw something in his portfolio? Were you expecting something else? And what do you predict that would his portfolio would consist of in the next quarter? So do keep me posted. Do let me know as well if you'd like to know an update of like what the Q1 of 2022 would consist of as well. So with that, hope to catch you again in another video, and thank you for watching this as well.